Now, it is the time we have been waiting for. But before we proceed with this exciting webinar, please allow me to give an idea of what this webinar is all about. As we all know, this webinar is an inaugural forum organized by UKM's Literature and Media Club to give exposure to UKM students to the diversity of ways literature functions in today's society. Because there is not much exposure to the field of literature, especially for non-English language studies and TESOL students, this program acts as a catalyst for university graduates to discover what literature can offer. The establishment of the Literature and Media Society is to connect the two vibrant fields of literature and media, and this forum sets the stage for the first of many such sharing opportunities that we hope to benefit university graduates. This program is attended by society members and UKM students, as well as local and international universities. We have invited panel members from the media industry and social media world. And we hope that the discussion today will empower participants in their understanding of the functions, importance, and usefulness of literature in today's world of work and social media. So without further ado, I would like to give a brief introduction about our speakers today, starting off with Mr. Khoo Chuang. Our distinguished guest, Khoo Chuang, is a financial journalist with an impressive 25 years of experience covering financial and capital markets across the world. He has worked for various renowned organizations such as the Edge Communications, Bloomberg LP, Thomson Reuters PLC, and BFM Radio in print, newswires, and radio TV broadcast web formats. Khoo has also been a co-host of The Morning Run on the KL-based business and finance-oriented radio station BFM, and a former contributing editor and columnist with the Edge Media Group. He is a corporate governance advocate and spent 9 years as an analyst at the shareholder activist firm, the Minority Shareholders Watchdog Group. In addition, Khoo owns and manages KHC Ventures Sendian Berhad, or Do More, where he is involved in financial market communications strategy, content creation, podcasting, and CEO or board media spokespersons, crisis communications training. Furthermore, Khoo has a fascinating podcast titled Do More, Take Charge of Your Life, housed on YouTube and Spotify, where he interviews Malaysian and regional leaders on entrepreneurship, investment, and leadership. We are thrilled to have him here with us today to share his knowledge and experience. Today, Mr. Khoo will be sharing his insights on the importance of proficiency in English and literature in the business and professional world. Over to you, Khoo. Mr. Khoo, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thanks, Natasha. Thanks, Dr. Rahana. And a very good morning to all you students this morning. The honor is all mine. If possible, I'd like to share 4 things with all of you this morning. Okay. So number 1, you probably know this already, but it's worth reinforcing. English remains the language of the business world. If you want to do well in life and get ahead, it pays to listen, learn, speak, and write to a reasonably high degree in English, because it will give you the credibility and respect among your professional peer group. You probably know this, but some of the wealthiest economies in the world with the biggest names in business, whether it be Apple, HSBC, BP, or all English-speaking in the US, UK, Australia, Canada, etc. And if you want to work in Google, Tesla, Apple, or NVIDIA, you have no choice but to learn English and speak it to a very high standard. Also, if you want to start a business and raise money, venture funding invariably emanates from the G7, namely countries like Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, the US, and the EU. You'll notice that some of those countries are not native English speakers, but many of its professionals have studied and worked in London and New York, and it would have become their de facto language in the business world. Number 2, English, like Mandarin and Spanish, is one of the fastest growing global languages in the world. According to the Harvard Business Review, English is spoken at a useful level by about 1.75 billion people worldwide. That's 1 in every 4 of us. And according to the HBR, there's nearly 400 million native speakers in countries like the US and Australia, about 1 billion fluent speakers in formerly colonized nations such as India and Nigeria, including Malaysia, and millions of people around the world use it as a second language. Number 3, English is the language of the internet, where commerce, communications, and even social life increasingly occurs. The Harvard Business Review estimates that nearly 600 million people use it on the internet. And I think finally, and most importantly, for all of us in the room especially, to remember that English is merely another language. And this is what I tell my kids as well. Speaking more than one language increases your chances of getting ahead in life and increases your chance to, to join the 1%ers in the world, the very successful business people and, career people around the world. Fortunately, in Malaysia, we live under a scenario where we have the ability, if we have the will to do so, to learn 4 languages, namely English, Bahasa Malaysia, Mandarin, as well as Tamil, which if you do so, enables you to work in, with, off, and 4 of the largest, wealthiest, and fastest growing economies in the world, namely the US, China, India, and Indonesia. That's a combined population of roughly 3.5 billion people and about half the total world population. So if my message is just summarized to one sentence this morning, it is to learn English and learn it well, but also to level up in Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil because you've got the chance to do so. Okay, back to you, Natasha.
Thank you, Mr. Khoo, for that valuable insight. I agree, we should definitely strive to be proficient and gain a high standard of English, and it is definitely widely used. Moving on, it is with great pleasure that I introduce our second esteemed speaker for today, Ms. Rabiatul Adawiyah Yusof, fondly known as Ruby. Ruby is currently pursuing her Doctor of Philosophy in Post-Colonial Literature in English at University Kebangsaan Malaysia. With her research focusing on memoirs by Malaysian female freedom fighters and their cultural identity, Ruby has delved deep into the narratives of women who played significant roles during the colonial and post-colonial periods in Malaysia. Her expertise lies in exploring the rich tapestry of women's memoirs, shedding light on the diverse experiences and challenges faced by women during this transformative era. Before her academic pursuits, Ruby made her mark as an educator at a private learning center in Kuala Lumpur, drawing upon her legal background to empower her students. However, driven by her passion for women's history and narratives, she has now embraced a freelance research career. Ruby's dedication to promoting literature and fostering meaningful discussions extends beyond academia. Through her popular social media account on Instagram at Buku Ruby, she creates engaging content where she explores books of various genres, including literature, history, politics, and gender. Her thoughtful analyses and insightful reviews have attracted a wide audience, making her an influential voice in the literary community. Please join me in welcoming Rabiatul Adawiyah Yusof, a passionate researcher, educator, and advocate for women's narratives. Today, Ms. Ruby will be sharing her experience engaging the followers of her Instagram at Buku Ruby on the power of stories. Ms. Ruby, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Can you share my three slide PowerPoint? Okay, just a bit of a background. So I go by Ruby. I'll just share with you guys this completely informal experience of mine, which have turned into my lifelong purpose, so to speak lah. Actually, the pandemic, I think, changed everything. As Natasha mentioned, I was not planning on pursuing literature. It's always been at the back burner. And I thought I've lost, my ship has sailed and I'm going to just spend my life being a teacher and then perhaps do something else later. And then I also came from a legal background, which was quite interesting, but really not what I'm truly passionate about. So when the pandemic happened, I think all of us were confined at home. And then I think all of us were looking for connection. I think that is the true essence of the human soul. We want to connect. We want to find like-minded people. We would like to exchange opinions, exchange stories, and exchange feelings. And that is how I started this account. So it is quite a small account, to be honest. But it is a vibrant one. And the pandemic really pushed a lot of this. I'm calling these people hobby people. So for the readers, we call ourselves bookstagrammers. So this bookstagram, and it's like book talk. So book talk is on TikTok. So bookstagram is on Instagram. And a lot of us just started being on social media. It became like a virtual world for all of us, this lonely souls in apartments and in houses, and we cannot move beyond 5 kilometers and whatnot, right? So what do? We read a book, and then, oh my God, we are so excited to share our thoughts about the book. And I'm not sure if you guys have ever felt that frustration. You wanna shout to the whole world, oh my God, this is an amazing story. Oh my God, what an amazing find. Oh my God, this book is so cheap. What a bargain. I would like to just scream and shout and tell everyone about this. So yes, so basically that was how Bookstagram started, not just for me, but for I think everyone else. And it really just flourished from then on. And to be honest, right, I never expected that this would amount to anything, in all honesty. It was just a hobby of mine. But I think around 6 to 1 year, yeah. So after a few months, I started thinking, okay, perhaps this can be a serious pursuit. So I registered for Master of Arts in Literature in UKM lah. So I started, but only personally. The thing is with social media that people don't seem to, or people do not repeat enough, is it is a form of documentation. You document your thoughts. You document your journey. And it can serve as your mini portfolio. Great thing is you don't have to be emailing people about it. If it is a public profile, people can just reach you. People can see what is your line of work, what are your thoughts, what is your inclination, and they will connect with you once if they have any opportunities arising. And that is what happened to me lah. So because of this vibrant community, I've started meeting up with quite a few local authors, which I'm quite shocked about. So in the next slide, as you can see, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so that is Tash Au, the gentleman over there with the mole. So he's one of the foremost, first, I think, globally famous Malaysian author, a very nice guy lah. But I met him because I was connected to another author, Dina Zaman. And how did these authors get to know me? Because I review their books and I look for their social media handle, and then I tag them, because I feel like it is very important for writers to know how we feel about their writing. A lot of times, right, writing is a very isolating career. I think Afrina can talk more about it later. A lot of writers would like to know that their stories have impacted people. And I think as readers and as consistent readers, we have that duty. And what, and the best way to do it these days, if you don't want to send to publications or newspapers, you write it on social media and you let them know, thank you for impacting our lives with your beautiful stories. And Tash Au has actually personally told me that, thank you so much for sharing my stories, because it gives people like him motivation to continue, especially in Malaysia. I don't think people write for money, or I don't think people write to gain financial benefits. They write because they have to, because they have a story to share. All right, so a lot of this really opened up doors for me. And again, I must emphasize, this is a small account. Yeah, so can you go to the next slide? So a lot of people, right, because you have these hashtags, right, hashtag humanities, hashtag feminism, hashtag Malaysia Membaca. So when organizations know that I do this kind of things, I read this kind of things, and I'm also a freelance researcher, I've received a lot of invitation to actually conduct talks on these books. And okay, I think this is very important to see, and I get paid for it as well. So it was a very funny thing, because never once in a million years I expected to be paid to be a public nerd. I call myself a public nerd. And never once I thought that my ideas or my thoughts would matter and people would actually want to hear what I have to say. But yes, but people do want to hear it. I would like to just remind all of you students, I know that when we are young, we tend to feel very inferior, especially with a lot of conversations going around with this intern should be paid, but you guys are too young and whatnot. That our ideas are never in isolation. We have ideas and it shouldn't be confined within our own mind. I feel like you must make connections, and it is possible. Putting ourselves out there can be challenging, but it is a worthy endeavor, because, for example, my research focuses on women's memoirs. And I wouldn't want for the research to be just existing and then finish my thesis and then just put it in the library. Hopefully that's not what happened. So what can we do? So women's memoirs, I hope it can impact the discourse of women's history, the discourse of finding out history that is marginalized, finding out pieces of narrators that the society never really focuses on, and especially with regarding women's movements or just the general state of society in Malaysia. Because I think today is what is literature's position in society? It's basically to impact lives. We cannot exist in isolation. We must always move alongside communities. All right. And that includes media as well, and all that lah. So yeah, so that is my journey. I hope that can somewhat gives all of you the confidence to actually do this, because if I can do it, I think everybody else who are more who are more well versed in technology can do this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ruby, for that important backstory of how an influencer looks at her role in social media. I agree. I feel like we all might have started somewhere that is unrelated to English, yet end up being so passionate for it. I used to dream of becoming a doctor, the typical, and here I am. Thank you for advocating for people to follow what their heart truly calls for. And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our esteemed panel member, Ms. Nur Fatin Afrina Muhammad Fakhruddin. Ms. Fatin is a highly accomplished individual with a remarkable academic background. She excelled in her studies, earning 11 A's in her SPM examination at College Sultan Alam Shah in 2016, and achieving an impressive score of 41 out of 45 points in the IB program at College Mara Banting in 2018. Currently in her final year of medicine at RCSI UCD Malaysian campus, Fatin's dedication to her studies and her passion for the medical field are evident. She is also an accomplished writer, having been recognized for her literary talent since 2019. Her published works include Inkling in 2019 and Not Here to Stay in 2022. Fatin's achievements extend beyond academics and writing. She was crowned the winner of the 2017 Oxford Fajar Big Write competition, showcasing her exceptional communication skills. With her diverse background and experiences, Fatin brings a unique perspective to our panel. Please join me in welcoming Nur Fatin Afrina Muhammad Fakhruddin. Today, Ms. Fatin will be sharing her insights on how a medical student found storytelling as a medium of self-expression.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here as one of the panels. Thank you, Ms. Ruby and Mr. Khoo, for sharing your insights. So to answer this question, personally, I think that storytelling found me instead of the other way around. So I started flipping through books even before I knew how to read. There are literal pictures of me as a toddler with books on my lap, even though I was basically like 1 year old. I didn't know how to read. Then when I could read, I never really stopped until now. So basically I was exposed to stories so young that when I started truly writing when I was 11, it felt like home. So in a way, storytelling found me and it had waited for me for a while. So people always find it contradicting that I take medicine but write fiction. But I think it all boils down to the reason why we tell stories. So self-expression for many is a form of seeking validation. It's not wrong. It's a human need. It's not a basic need like air, like oxygen, but it's a human need. Like Miss Ruby said, we exist not in isolation. We have to exist in a society. So it's just common need for us to need self-expression. We seek to be understood, but some people, like me, we express to make sense, to understand the things that are going on in our life. So that's why I write fiction. because fiction is like turning the incoherent things in your head into a story, basically, that people can find home in and maybe learn from. So by turning it into stories, I make things to make sense in my head and give people something that they can find a home in. So it's like it's turning the soil that is my life into flowers that people can pick. I hope that makes sense. So what's the correlation between like this and medicine? So medicine is a lifelong sentence of trying to make sense of things. So medical school is you learning about the human body, and when you're a doctor, you're constantly trying to make sense of patients, because every person has a different biology, a different system, and sometimes different anatomy. So it's like you constantly trying to make sense of things. I think that's a similarity between storytelling and also medicine. It's that ever-changing logic of things. So yeah, I think that's how I exist as a person who loves both literature and writing, and also the human body or medicine.
Thank you, Mrs. Fatin, for that eye-opening sharing. It is fascinating how even those who are not as verbally expressive can express themselves through literature. I, for one, am very impressed by your journey. Brilliant cognition, Miss. Thank you, Mr. Khoo and Miss Ruby and Miss Fatin, for helping us understand how literature has impacted their respective roles in society. And now, in the final round of the panel discussion, we would like to ask the panel members to identify some key lessons that we university students can implement as we work on getting our university degree. Let's kickstart with the first question that would be directed to Mr. Khoo. What are some ways we at the university should approach the learning of literature to meet the demands of the media industry?
Yeah, I think, Natasha, thanks for the question. I think the main thing to remember about literature and I guess secondarily English is the fact that it should be evolutionary in context, right? Too often, we get into the really deep into the weeds in terms of the classicals, stories, whether it's Jane Austen or Daphne du Maurier or Alfred Hitchcock or one of these other characters, and we don't update it into the context of the times. I think that right now, when we're living in the 21st century, we are really in a very fortunate position because storytelling is no longer as one-dimensional as it used to be with books, right? The Gutenberg press was revolutionary for its time in the 18th century, but really today, the opportunity to tell stories and to use it in the current context, and also to project our abilities to the world, is unvaried and very, very rich. I'm talking about things like Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and all the other social networks that we have available. Storytelling should not be one-dimensional in the context of the written word. It can and should be and has been very successfully done by some of the most successful creators in their ability to attain huge audiences, not just in terms of writing the script that they will speak about in the industry or the context or the expert knowledge in the verticals, whether it's medicine or whether it's literature, right? But the ability to produce videos, to speak out the script in a very enticing and very attractive way, and then to produce those videos, and then to learn how to promote that content to the wider world and to gain millions and millions of subscribers. I on YouTube is my main weapon of choice when it comes to social media. And some of the influencers, I hate the word influencers, by the way, some of the creators that I follow on YouTube, some of them are so young and so talented, and the ability to produce stories that are so compelling is beyond words, right? For example, I just recently latched onto this Swedish creator. She's about 21 years old. She talks about life in the Swedish hinterland in the northern part of Sweden, where she's basically in a remote wasteland, and it's 90% of the year it's extremely cold, it's extremely barren, it's extremely dark, and she produces these amazing stories about how she goes ice bathing and how she goes fishing and how she spends time living the simple minimalistic life with her boyfriend. She's 21 years old, And she does it to such a high degree of ability. She's got something like 4 or 5 million subscribers. It's quite astounding. So I think that what I'm trying to say is that storytelling should be and should be updated and evolved to such an extent that it reflects the, I guess, the zeitgeist of our times, where we've got this ability to tell not stories, not just in a one-dimensional way, but in a four-dimensional way. And guess what, right? We are living in a time when the metaverse is nearly upon us. We can soon tell stories in a 5-dimensional way. And it's really exciting. It's scary for many people, especially for people of my generation, but it's also very, very exciting.
Thank you for sharing your insights. Revolution has definitely made language more interesting. I believe the collaboration between literature and media is something that everyone should take part in because it unlocks so much possibilities in everyone. Thank you once again, Mr. Khoo. The next question is for Ms. Fatin. What are some possible ways university students can develop their creative skills of storytelling?
All right. My motto in life is to just do it and stop overthinking it, because only by doing something you will make mistakes, and by making mistakes is how you learn. And that also applies to writing, to storytelling. But that's a pretty vague advice. People don't like that. So then I'll talk about like the input and output process. So to be able to tell a story, you need like input. So some people read books, so read more books. Some people watch people, so watch more people. Some people watch movies, so watch more movies. It doesn't matter what your input is. And we also have Mr. Khoo highlighted how social media has been like very phenomenal lately. So we can take that as an input and we can use that for our storytelling, for anything that you want to write. And then from then you study the way things are written, and not to copy it, but to find your own style. So maybe for a while you see that you are imitating the people that you like, the writers that you like, but with time you'll develop your own style. And there's input and then there's output. So that's where sharing comes into place. So by sharing where you write, you show it to your friends or post it somewhere, because now we're in the era of social media. It actually helps to have people cheer you on, even if you don't think that you need it. It's actually very motivational. But know that if you're not the kind to share, because most writers are mostly introverts, they're actually very private, and they find like trouble sharing things that are very precious to them, especially the things that they write to the public. Know that even reading it to yourself counts as output. So model this input and output process in a way that will benefit you. And in the middle of that, just go back to my vague advice. Write on paper, on a keyboard, on your phone. Just write and never compare yourself to authors who have made it. Block it all out, because in the end, writing is a solitary thing. The sharing and publishing is the thing that it's not solitary. That's the part where you need to share. So if you want writing to maintain as a solitary thing, it's up to you. So basically, in conclusion, just do it. Don't overthink it.
Thank you for your answer, Ms. Fatin. Mistakes are the best teacher. I used to always watch European YouTubers and read those dark diary books, but now, long after being exposed to many other styles, I found my own. Thank you once again. And lastly, to Ms. Ruby, what are some strategies we as university students can take to develop the habit of reading works of fiction, especially if reading fiction is not a required course assignment?
All right, thank you. So that is a struggle I've been hearing for the past 13 years, because I was an educator and I used to teach teenagers reading all these novels and whatnot. But my first statement would be, there is no such thing as bad or good literature. Literature is literature. Stories are stories. A lot of supposedly these purist people, they would say, oh, this book is good, but this book is not proper literature, or this comic is not good enough. There is no such thing. I think you must start from what you like, right? So everyone have their own preference. It doesn't matter young adult, romance, or history, fantasy and whatnot. There is no genre that should be out of reach. And I also feel like a lot of people think that they are too good for this genre or too good for that genre. In all honesty, every sort of reading or exposure would lead to something better, would lead to something good. So always find what you like and start from there, because our journey is not always linear, but it will get you somewhere from point A to point B, from point B to point C. So I think when I was younger, all of us started, I'm not sure about all of you, but I started from Disney movies, Cinderella, all of those princessy things. And then from then on, we started with storybooks, and then perhaps we started with the school version of Sherlock Holmes and whatnot. And then eventually you will develop what you like. You must know what you like, and you must know what you don't like as well. Because I think when you are forced to read what you don't like, the journey is over. So even as educators, because maybe some of you would be educators in the future, never force people to read what they don't like, because you will end the story or the journey for them at that very moment. Always validate their interests. And I know, you want to be honest about it, but always validate what other people prefer and never put them down. You will see this on social media as well, that people tend to put other people down. So I hope we don't do that, or we reduce such frequency. Yeah? All right. And then another thing is that I would like to echo what Mr. Khoo mentioned about we are so lucky that we live in this generation, or we live during this time. Because when I was younger, I was forced to read Jane Austen and Charles Dickens, because those were the cheapest novels. I could get them at 8 ringgit per copy. But nowadays, you can find novels that are more relatable to you. All of us, like Miss Fatin, Afrina mentioned just now, we want to make connections. The same thing when we read novels, we want to read about people who look like us. We want to read about people living in a society that we can relate to, communities that we recognize, instead of some Victorian backdrop era, which I'm sure some of you would find relatable as well. But nowadays, if you are interested in those sort of genre, we have so many local Malaysian writers that could really use the support. For example, we have Hannah Alkaf. I'm sure you've heard of Hannah Alkaf. If you don't, go check her out. Okay, thank you. And then like Miss Fatin Afrina's as well, because your stories are based in Malaysia, right, Miss Afrina? Are they about Malaysian people? And we have these Malaysian writers, so young in UK winning awards. And I'm like, wow. And I really, really love reading their novels, because when I read them, I see myself in them. I see all, the way they describe our food, our village houses, the way they describe the old people and whatnot. And I think literature really captures the sentiments of being Malaysia. So do explore, starting from where you are from. Do not feel pressured to try something because they look so fancy, because they look so posh, they look so upgraded, always stay true to yourself, know what you like, and then start from there. And again, there's no such thing as good or bad literature. A good story is a good story, and that's it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your response, Ms. Ruby. The whole appreciation of literature was implemented since high school with the existence of Comsas and literature. It might have felt forceful, yet I am sure many found their interest through it. And I relate so much. I used to shop at the blockbuster sections with my father, so the selections were definitely limited. Most of the books were considered old people books. But yeah, let's try to reduce the trend of putting down people's interests. Other than that, we love Malaysian writers. I personally thank them because they have truly inspired so many people. Now, based on the discussion we've had so far, it's fair to say that literature has value in today's world, and as university students, we must continue to equip ourselves with the literacy competency that will benefit us when we join the workforce. All right, we have A few minutes before we conclude today's event, I would like to open the floor to the audience to ask questions to the panel members.
Hello, good morning. So I have a few questions actually to ask to the panel. So I hope you all can bear with me. My name is Amirul. So the first question is to Mr. Khoo. Since you touched on the importance of English proficiency in your first round of discussion, so Malaysian Ministry of Higher Education has emphasized the importance of dignifying the use of Bahasa Melayu in universities. For example, in UKM, I believe almost all undergraduate programs requires you to write your thesis in Bahasa, except for English Language Studies, my program. I'm not so sure about TESOL. So do you see these steps, government steps, as regressive or backward? Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear the question. Was it about the government's unification of the languages? I couldn't quite hear the question.
Yes. Malaysian Ministry of Higher Education, they emphasize the importance of the use of Bahasa Melayu as a medium in universities. So for example, in UKM, almost all undergraduate program requires you to write your thesis in Bahasa, except for some of the courses in English Language Studies. So do you see this step as backward or regressive?
I think the government has its heart in the right place, because when you have the ability to use different languages, language is like a superpower. So if you have English, Bahasa Malaysia, you might have one or two more, whether it's Tamil or whether it's Mandarin, you are then able to conquer the world. Because don't forget, Malaysia might be a country of 35 million people, but you've also got Indonesia, which is nearly 300 million people, and they're emerging very, very quickly. Indonesia could well be the Brazil of Latin America. Indonesia could be the America of the world. We don't know how fast and how far they're going to go. So if you can learn Bahasa to a very high degree of proficiency, you are then going to be able to access a population of 400 million people who are getting richer, more progressive, more educated, and more advanced in the 21st century. Then if you have English as well, you've got nearly 2 billion people who use English. That's 2.5 billion people there. And that's maybe 1/3 of the global population. So I think the government has its heart in the right place.
Thank you, Mr. Khoo. I would like to ask now to Ms. Ruby, since you are from law background. So what was your family's reaction when you went from a lawyer now to becoming a student of literature and now pursuing a PhD? Yeah, what was their reaction?
I'm just going to be very honest with everyone, because this will take like maybe a full form memoir, but it's not great. I've actually always wanted to do English literature when I was younger. But then you know that because I came from a generation of millennials where if you're good in drawing, you take architecture. If you're good in science, you take medicine. And yeah, I can see Miss Afrina smiling. And then if you're good in English, you take law. So my late father was this typical patriarch, and he was like, okay, you're going to take law. I enjoyed legal learning. I must actually emphasize on that. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't miserable as a law student. However, when you want to decide what you want to do with your life, you must imagine yourself waking up to the job every day after you graduate. And I think this will be very relevant to all of you. Studying and working is different. So my family was against it, I think, for 3 years after I dropped my legal background for 3 years, and then I went to education. And then when I decided to pursue literature, it's because I'm consistent with what I want. I've never stopped reading. I've never stopped writing essays. I've never stopped connecting with people. And once they see your journey and how consistent you are with it, I believe that your family will usually come around. And even if they don't, right? What can they do to stop you from pursuing what you want? Because there are always ways. Like in Malay, it's called oh my god, I forgot what's the saying in Malay. Mau seribu jalan tak mau tak mau seribu dalih or something like that lah. Therefore, right, like Miss Fatin said, in isolation, you must decide what you want. You must also have these thoughts that really affirm and lead you to where you are. And you must also always believe in yourself, not just as a writer, as anything that you want to do. So know your purpose, the purpose that you can wake up to every single day in your life.
Thank you, Ms. Ruby. I actually have another question for you, but I think I want to ask Ms. Fatin first, then I can come back to you. Is that okay? All right. So Ms. Fatin, now we have AI evolution. We have ChatGPT, we have Bard, so they also can write short story, poetry. So as a writer yourself, do you see this as a threat for creative writers or authors? Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't catch the first sentence actually.
So now we have AI
Ah.
evolution. So like ChatGPT or Bard, they can write poetries and short stories.
Oh, I personally don't feel threatened when it comes to writing. As opposed to like artists, they would feel threatened because okay, when I tried researching through it, and then when I read stories that are written by like the AIs, they don't actually have the charm and flow of like humanly written stories. I'm not sure if other people see it, but if you read more, you actually see the difference. So I don't feel threatened by it for now. So I'm not sure if when it evolves, I would feel threatened by it, because I personally have like a different writing style. So I'm not sure how they could emulate it, but not now. I hope that answers the question.
Yep. Thank you very much for your answer. I'm sorry I have asked a lot of questions, but I think this is my final question to Ms. Ruby. I have been meaning to ask this since you are now a PhD student. So I think earlier this year, the UK government, led by Rishi Sunak, have replaced a few words in the original book of Roald Dahl. So words such as fat has been changed to enormous. So this is because we are evolving as a society, so it's deemed unsuitable for an audience or kids. So how do you read in this situation? How should we separate by preserving the original content and at the same time change some of the content that suits today's society? Yeah.
Oh, if you ask me personally, I do not believe in censorship. I do not believe in state-sponsored censorship, because today it can be certain words. What about the next day? Because if you want to censor things, then Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf. I'm not sure what is Mein Kampf in English. I forgot. Then nobody can read Adolf Hitler's books, or nobody can read a lot of these war criminals' texts. But you can still see them around. A lot of questionable characters and whatnot. I feel like if the book is to be altered in any way, then the publisher must inform, perhaps on the first page or on the second page, that some words have been altered with explanation, so that the readers can continue reading the books more well informed. And then if they would like to read the original text, they would have the option to do so. But to ban outright, oh no, I do not believe in banning. Even if the book may cause harm to society, sadly, it is my stance that books shouldn't be banned. And then all of us, Malaysian society, even though it's a bit risky, should be given the choice of what to read in its most authentic way. And then, of course, be offered alternatives, interpretation, and whatnot. Again, because censorship, I feel, cannot be in the hands of the authorities. Yes, just that. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Amirul. That is a very interesting question. And I have a feeling that, no wonder you directed the question to me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Ruby, Mr. Khoo, and Ms. Fatin for answering my question. Thank you very much.
We have a question from Noor Hani in the chat box. She asked if you guys agree that fiction is a better way to teach people lessons or a more effective way of teaching rather than nonfiction. Perhaps all of you can give your opinions on this, starting with Mr. Khoo.
There is no one way, obviously. It's not a rocket science, right? But I mean, I was really switched on to literature by my teacher in school, a lady named Mrs. Charles. And when she delivered, her lessons about, things like D.H. Lawrence, Sons and Lovers and things like that, it's, one of those ancient books, the old people's books, right? Like Miss Ruby talked about, and it's not really relevant to our times, but the way she delivered it, kind of like she was so passionate. She was so enlivened when she spoke about it. It was as if the characters came alive. And I can kind of like tell, I've only met Dr. Raihana this morning. I can tell all of you really love her. And I think, if I'm going to hazard a thought, I guess probably Dr. Raihana is one of those passionate people about literature as well. And, just her opening salvo about how she loves books and just being inquisitive. It's really, really, I guess it's telling. So there is no one scientific way of delivering lessons. It's really, I think, individually as well, someone's got to be interested, but also the deliverer of that, those lessons.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khoo. Ms. Ruby, floor is yours.
I echo Mr. Khoo completely that there is no one better way or the other. I feel like different students, different individual responds to different things. I've met a lot of people who cannot for the life of them manage stories or would fall asleep. Then you find different alternatives. Some people respond better to films and to visual media or to just going out to the park. However, I must also say that personally speaking, I feel like fiction and non-fiction, they are not mutually exclusive. They actually support each other. For example, if you're reading a story about Malaysia, it will be helpful to know what is the context, if you want to go a bit deeper into it. Because reading stories can also inform human nature. Reading non-fiction can inform our origin, our background. And whatnot. It's basically what we do in life, I believe, is to just learn a bit more about ourselves so that things make sense. Like Miss Afrina said, I love that, Miss Afrina. We do things to make sense of our situation so that we can improve where we stand in society. So yes, again, I love the question, but the answer is truly there is no better way. Or, this way is not better than that way. It's just that each way can be utilized to benefit the students most.
Thank you, Ms. Ruby. What's your take on this, Ms. Fatin?
I feel like I agree with all the points that Mr. Khoo came up with Ms. Ruby. So I think that it's not, as someone who reads both fiction and non-fiction, I feel like it applies to like different times and different situations of my life. So how do I say this? I'm not actually good with talking, so that's why I started a lot. So give me a minute. Like even like for example, like even when we have the Holy Quran, right? So in the Holy Quran, the script is not just about rules, not just a narration of what we should do and what we should not do. There are also stories. So that's how the book is so applicable to so many, because it has both. So I think it's Ms. Ruby, right? You said that fiction and non-fiction is not mutually exclusive. So it actually carries, some messages are carried better by nonfiction, some are carried better by fiction, but sometimes if you carry both with fiction and non-fiction, it carries the message deeper. So yeah, it's just a carrier of the message. So the message, if it's meant to be gotten across, it will go across no matter what the messenger is. Is it nonfiction or fiction?
Thank you, Ms. Fatin. We have another question in the chat box directed to Ms. Fatin. It's from Nurul Atira, but before she asked the question, she mentioned how she is one of her admirers from TikTok. And her question is, in between juggling workloads and assignments, while still pursuing our love for fictional crafts, how do you find the time and motivation to write? She finds it difficult to do both, and she has to sacrifice the passion to write. And since her schedule is getting more packed in these coming semesters, I'm sure she's struggling. Can you give your thoughts about this?
I think that you have to remind yourself that you're actually a student first. Like for me, I remind myself that I am a student first. So I don't always, I don't let myself feel bad when I'm not writing or reading, because I know my responsibility at the moment is to study. So the way I balance writing and studying is to try to eliminate the guilt, because guilt actually takes time. So what I do is I prioritize my studying. So when I'm done studying, if I have time at night, I would work on either writing or reading. So when you keep on like setting your priorities straight, you actually you actually spend less time feeling guilty about it, and you actually have time to do things. So your enemy is actually not time, it's guilt, and it's the thought of wanting to do things and not being able to do things. I think that's my take on it.
Thank you, Ms. Fatin. We have another question directed for you from Nurin Fakiha. She is curious if you have ever experienced burnout, and if so, how can we budding writers overcome it?
I think burnouts for people are actually different. So my burnouts are actually purely like physical. Like for instance, I get like fevers and it would take me down for like 1 day. Like I wish having a fever right now. So that's my burnout. So my burnout is my body forcing myself to like rest. So you have to actually see what's your burnout. So and you cannot compare it to other people. Like, how can this person like work for so long and be fine? Maybe that person is naturally a workaholic. So if they don't do work, that's how they burn out. If they do work, that's how they're happy. But are you actually like that? So for most people, it's actually the other way around. If they do too much work, they burn out and they need more rest. So then you have to actually listen to your body. So you actually have to see the burnout as your body like telling you something, and you have to listen to it. So so try not to reach that burnout phase, because when you're burnout, your body is actually stressed out and your immune system will be down. So that's one of the things that you should avoid. That's how you get a fever when you're burned out. And how to overcome it, just listen to your body, and then when you actually have like enough energy for it, then you have to plan like what caused me to burn out this time, what should I change. And yeah, basically it's an act of listening to yourself and your body.
Thank you, Ms. Fatin. Get well soon. And we have another question in the chat box. It's from Nur Kairina, and she has a question directed to Mr. Khoo. In your opinion, what are the most important skills for a financial journalist to have in today's digital age?
Inquisitiveness. You need to be curious, and I think that that is relevant across the board. If I can just do a little bit of a meander here, and I want to reference what Noor Fatin was saying. That's something that also do with Ruby's comments earlier as well. I think Fatin was talking about basically just doing it, right? And I think this is correct. But also, you know, when I just found you out on Instagram, and I love the fact that you use it, you use the visual medium, and you also demonstrate your ability to write on Instagram. Is really quite impressive. And I think that when we are able to use social media to demonstrate our abilities and to also use it as a creative outlet, then maybe the stress and the headaches and the overwork may not result, because you are doing something which you love and you can show the world instantly. You don't have to get published by Simon and Schuster to get seen, right, necessarily. And this is how I found, one of Doc Rahana and I know a mutual friend, Nohisham Hussain of EPF. And I discovered his blog about 10, 12 years ago, and I was blown away by his ability to really get into the weeds in economics, but also his ability to write so well. He's such an eloquent guy. And I was really impressed by his ability to just communicate very esoteric principles in a very clear and unadulterated way. And I think this is the power of social media, right? And just to reference what Noor Fatin was saying, if you are able to just, drop your insecurities and just go out and show the world what you can do, And the way to do this is by experiencing things. It's to go out there, to sally forth into the wild blue yonder, and just to get those adventures going, go traveling, meet new people, talk to new cultures, just experience things. If you want to learn cycling, learn cycling. If you want to go and climb a mountain, climb a mountain. And experiences are the bedrock of good fiction. If you have those experiences to call upon, you can write from the heart, and from the heart is where the best writings to be found. Ernest Hemingway, when he wrote The Snows of Kilimanjaro, he referenced his time as a soldier. And when he wrote The Snows of Kilimanjaro, which is a very short, 12-page short story, it was mind-blowing, his ability to just communicate those things. So just to wrap all those concepts up into one short reply, what are one of the tenets of being a good financial journalist? Journalism is a storytelling thing, whether it's in finance or whether it's in cookery or whether it's in medical health or whatever it is. Go out there, experience life, and get that curiosity, because curiosity will not kill the cat. It will make you a much richer individual.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khoo. I agree. Curiosity so far has been very good for me. I personally have a question for Miss Ruby. So, how do adaptations of literary works into different forms of media influence our interpretation and appreciation of the original text?
Oh, I love this question because, despite all of this speaking and suggesting Malaysian writers, my number one favorite writer is Jane Austen, which I find very not post-colonial of me. But it helps, I think because we always want to compare how we visualize characters and then perhaps the interpretation as well. So when we watch adaptations, it doesn't really matter, to be honest, the adaptation is good or faithful or not, but you get to compare, so this is how the director imagined the characters to look like. And this is how the character is presented, and whether you like it or not. So that is actually very, very helpful. I think BBC, the British national channel, they love to publish, or they love to adapt stories of Jane Austen and all those other classical writers every 10 years, and in Malaysia as well. I think the sort of value they give to these timeless stories is that it brings the story alive, because our senses gets really awakened when we see those characters. We get really, really excited about it. And that is what gives value to it. And then another thing, which is a very practical thing, is not everyone has the time and the hours to finish a whole novel. So you cannot really just give someone a book, okay, this is 500 Charles Dickens and whatnot, right? But 2 hours, I hope is manageable. Or a 1.5 hour, or a 30-minute sort of YouTube interpretation of it. And we must be grounded, in reality, that people sometimes don't have time, but perhaps after they watch those adaptations, they'll be interested to read, the novels that the stories were adapted from. So I'm really looking forward for, maybe Miss Afrina, your novels can be adapted into a series soon. I would love to watch them. So yes, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing for these stories to be adapted, and really just the dissemination of these materials can really lead the stories to bigger audience and a bigger readership as well.
Thank you very much, Miss Ruby. Heard that, Miss Fatin? Maybe one of your novels can be published. Okay, so now we have another question from the chat box. Shal wants to ask regarding manga, because she started reading manga and she wanted to ask that she's very obsessed with reading any kind of books, but mostly novel until today. But because of that, she's struggling with her study times and her sleeping issues. Is there any way that you guys think can act as a solution for her? Can we begin with Mr. Khoo?
Yeah, audiobooks. If you have an audiobook subscription, you can easily do 2 or 3 things at the same time. If you're cooking or cleaning the house, you can actually listen to audiobooks, right? Right, Ruby, right?
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Spotify,
Yeah, so
a lot of
audiobooks
them.
yeah, it's a good hack. Yeah. So yeah, short answer, audiobook. Thanks for the answer, question, Shah.
Thank you, Mr. Khoo. What's your take on this, Miss Ruby?
So the thing is, when we know that we have limited time, choose how do I say this? So if I don't have time, I will choose a thin book. And if I really don't have time, but I want to read something, because sometimes I have that need to read or to just devour a story, then I choose a short story. But if I really, 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 really don't have time, then I go to poems. There's a lot of good poetry around. Because when you want to read, it's just to have secondary experiences of traveling to another world. So widen your reading range, and how do I say this? Do not feel pressured to finish a story. That is the thing with all of us. Sometimes we Malaysians are overachievers. So once we start a novel, or we must finish the novel. No, it's completely okay, everyone, to drop a book if you no longer enjoys it. I drop so on Bookstagram or social media, it's called DNF, do not finish. It's okay to DNF the books once you stop enjoying them, because life is short, everyone, and we don't have a lot of hours to spare. And yeah, so basically just time yourself. Okay, if you don't have a lot of time, just choose something short. If you have a bit of time, maybe half an hour, choose a short story. And then if you feel like, okay, I want an epic novel, then you can choose a longer novel. So that's it.
I agree. I also set schedules for myself. Like I'll do like 30 minutes of reading, 30 minutes of reading every day. But that habit, I've abandoned it because I'm so busy in degree. What's your take on this, Miss Fatin?
I think maybe you should come up with like a reward system. Like what I do is that if I finish this the list of things that I need to study for the week, I can finish this book in the weekend. So it's like a reward system. But sometimes when it's like near exams, I completely not read at all. So, and that's fine. Like I said, just eliminate the guilt. You're a student now, so like that's your responsibility now. So don't feel guilty if you can't read, but if you have time, like do it. So it's not gonna go anywhere. Reading the books they're not gonna run from you when you need them. It's just there, it's waiting for you. So don't pressure yourself.
Thank you, Miss Fatin. And yes, Dr. Rai, we shall not DNF compulsory reading for our courses.
Okay, hello. I'm Hani. I'm one of the participants. I wanted to ask a question, actually, two. So one is for Mr. Khoo, because from the introduction, you said that you had 25 experience as a financial journalist. And so I wanted to know what exactly was your background? Was it in finance or was it in journalism? So yeah.
I'm in the same camp as Ruby lah. I studied law. And
Ah,
yeah. In my era, if you you could only have a choice of 5 things you could study, right? It's either medicine, architecture, engineering, accountancy, and law. So I couldn't draw. Not very smart. So I wasn't like Fatin, couldn't be a doctor. So I think can write, so better just become a lawyer lah.
So
But-
true, so true. Yeah.
Right, Ruby, right? But yeah, so the legal background allows you to devour huge, reams of text and just to, kind of like distill, principles and all that from legal journals and what have you. But the background was in law lah. Then I did, I think, a little bit of time in merchant banking. Then I went into tax, and then I fell into financial journalism with the edge. Then from there, it was quite an easy thing for me. Very inquisitive, a bit of a busybody when you're young, still am. And then can write, would like to write well, better. Then kind of like it's, and before you know it, in a blink of an eye, it's 25 years, so time does fly. Time doth fly, people. So yeah.
oh wow. Thank you so much. Because I've always wondered what it's like to go into journalism. Because I wanted to know, like, since you have um, specialization in finance, right? So that was very interesting to me. But thank you, Mr. Khoo. And my other question is, as people who work in essentially the creative industry in Malaysia, or are passively in the creative industry in Malaysia, for Ruby or Fatin, since she's in medicine. What do you think of Malaysia's or the government's take on the creative industry in Malaysia? Do you think they're well funded, or do you think they're as bringing as other sectors in the country? Sorry if my question was confusing.
Miss Afrina can go first. She's the self-published writer. I go after you.
I feel like I don't know about like the whole industry because I'm just passively in this industry, but so far it's if you're looking forward to like go into this industry, just don't expect anything from the government or anything. It's just you and yourself and the readers. So yeah, don't expect anything. So I don't know like the state of what is offered or anything. It's just don't expect anything. I don't know if that answers the question because I don't really have an answer to that.
I know it does. I wanted to see your perspective on it.
Yes. So if I can just add to Miss Afrina, yes, I was going to say exist beyond the government support. But what I want to say is don't be so hung up on government. Focus on communities, because let me tell you, right? I used to think that, a few years ago, being a self-published writer can be so daunting, right, Miss Afrina? But nowadays, you can have so much support on social media. Social media can actually give you friends, allies, fans, admirers, and whatnot. So believe in communities, but you must go out and look for them. So go out doesn't mean physical. Just show yourself, be present in any communities that you would like to be a part of. And people will support you. If not financially, they will give you time, they will give you energy, they will give you feedback. So always be open to like Mr. Khoo said, right? Just go out there, be curious, be inquisitive, and never stop learning beyond your classrooms. Of course, you must learn in classrooms. I must say that for Dr. Rai. But the learning shouldn't just stop there. Always find your own communities and have your own support system. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, everyone. We have a question from Sitin or Aisha. Do you think being good at English automatically makes you a good writer? If not, what are some of the tips for those who wish they can write better? She is asking all the panelists to give their point of view. So can we begin with Mr. Khoo?
Styles is very unique. Styles are very unique. You don't have to, use huge words to communicate something very simple or something very complex. I think if you are writing from the heart, if you're writing experientially, and then you just start the process going, like what Miss Fatin was saying, don't be afraid. Don't be hung up on what people think. Just start writing. Do like what Ruby's doing, right? She's got her Instagram channel. I've just subscribed to her Instagram. She takes a picture. She goes to a library in Penang. She goes to the district library. She finds all these books on government history, and then she writes something about it. And I find it fascinating because she's writing from the heart. If you're able to go out there, be curious, have those experiences, and start documenting them, not just in the written word, but also maybe visually as well, pictorially or with video, then suddenly you're on the path to becoming a writer. And just on the subject of earlier there was a question on sleep deprivation, right? I have to confess, I stopped reading Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things, because it's too difficult to get through. Leo Tolstoy is the same thing, but then Jack Reacher's books, I cannot stop reading them, so they're unputdownable, right? So if you're able to write in a very candid and a very enthusiastic and very real way, then I think that's half the job done. So yeah, you don't have to be necessarily good in English in the definition sense of the word to be a good writer. You just have to write from the heart, and I think that's what matters.
That's true. Writing from the heart is truly what matters. I feel like a lot of people struggle with this because they feel confined by their language, but that's true. So can we ask Ms. Ruby's opinion on this?
That is a brilliant question, because people always assume if you can speak very well, because I'm Kelantanese, right? Wow, can speaking very chai, people say, they will always assume you can write. For example, I've always thought that I can be a good novelist. Never finished a novel in my life, so I really my salute to Miss Afrina. However, what I've learned is any sort of writing, you can explore any sort of writing that you like. So at this point in time, I've discovered that I'm better off writing essays or writing opinion pieces, because that is just my style, and I just have too many ideas in my head that needs expression. And then I saw also a question on writer's block, right? So just like what Mr. Khoo said just now, just write down, scribble your thoughts, and then document them. I cannot emphasize more on this. You must document your thoughts, because if you have an idea and you don't put it anywhere, you don't draw, you don't paint, you don't write, it will be gone forever. Like the moment you forget about it. So if you document things, even though they may seem incoherent, they may seem, oh my God, what is this? Like a whole pile of chaos, but you can draw from this chaos and perhaps produce something that is a little bit more tangible and something that makes more sense. So always believe in it. Journaling or writing or having a notebook, going wherever, whenever, every time you have some ideas, always jot them down, or even talk to your friends. At least you can search like on WhatsApp, right? If you have some sort of ideas and whatnot. So try to document your thoughts. And also this thing about being a good, being good in English. I would like to ask everyone to actually tell me, what do you think it means, being good in English? Is it being grammatically correct? Because my grammar is all over the place. Does it mean having a dictionary-like vocabulary? No. I think what matters is if you're able to convey your thoughts and people understand them. And even better, people can relate to them. People resonate with you. I think that is the main point of language. It's not to be perfect in it, but it's to be able to stay true to who you are using English as a medium. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Miss Ruby. Miss Fatin, it's your turn.
I really agree with what Miss Ruby said. Like, what's the definition of being good in English? Like, you have to think about it. Like, is it like the fact that you're good at English or a good writer that is stopping you, or is it your definition of it that is stopping you? Because like Mr. Khoo said, it's actually, what's most important is you have to write from the heart. I know it sounds cliche, but when you actually do it, because I'm writing fiction, so what I learned is that when you write a book, it's not actually the language that matters the most. It's the heart that you put in it. It's the time that you're willing to give, and your strength to keep doing it even though you don't feel like it. So it's not actually just the language. So if language is what is stopping you, you either do something about it, or you have to figure out what's your definition of being a good writer and being good in English is. Because personally, I'm not even in the English background. I study medicine. So I personally feel like my English is not that good. I have made a lot of grammatical errors in my books, and then my editor told me that actually making like these errors are actually normal when you write, when you're writing, because when you're writing, you're not actually thinking about like how the sentence sounds. You actually just want to put it on paper. That's where editor comes in. That's where that's why you have like a very gruesome editing process afterwards. But that's just writing in books. So I hope like that's not something that is stopping you, because there are so many other things that you probably have that you actually already have that could make you a good writer.
For me, being good in English means that you are willing to continuously learn, because language is so big, there's no end point to it, right? As someone who really enjoys English since I was young, I feel like there has been many times where I face situations where what I want to say is not the same as what I end up saying. like it'll be jumbled up, and certain times, which I really appreciate, friends and family would sometimes tell me that, oh, your pronunciation for this word is wrong. And I feel like it's the ability to accept that is what makes you a good learner. So we have a question from Nur Karina. Sorry. Right? Okay. So her question is, have you guys ever had writer's block? And how did you overcome it? Can we start with Ms. Fatin?
My my experience with writer's block is I tend to just power through. So people say that like when you, it's actually harder to confront like a blank page. So what I do is, if I have a blank page, I just write something like gibberish, just anything, just to like put it like a sentence. And then I go to cafes or somewhere where I have to sit for a long time and just power through. And I think that when most of the time when I have a writer's block, it's because I'm being too hard on myself. So actually I have to check like the voices in my head and like make sure they're kind enough like during my writing. So it's actually like you have to power through, but you actually have to be kind to yourself while writing.
Thank you, Ms. Fatin. What's your take on this, Miss Ruby?
Because just now Miss Fatin mentioned that she's an introvert, right? And I'm an absolute extrovert. I am the most extrovert person I know. Sometimes, right, when we want to write and when we are hard on ourselves, right, Miss Fatin, we get stuck in our own universe and it can feel very limiting. So usually for me, I need to go out of my room. I need to go out of my house. I need to just feel, that wanderlust, that feeling of amazement, talk to my friends and whatnot. Just have that positive feeling come back to me. Sometimes when we are too hard on ourselves, we need a bit of a grounding moment that, okay, you know what? It's not that bad. You can do this. If you make mistakes, so what? But then one thing that I think someone has told me is you must allow yourself the time to rest. If today doesn't feel like a good day for you, tomorrow. Because I think most of us here, when you write, especially if you write stories, it's not really a day job. Like, oh, you must finish it by today or whatnot, right? So you must trust the process. Allow yourself to rest. And if it's too late, tomorrow will be a new day, another day. Because to be honest, right, when you're into writing, when you're into stories, the stories never really leave your head anyway. It will always stay there, lingering, until you write them down. So yeah, so just find something that gives you enjoyment, tap onto that, and then just restart. If it fails, restart again. That's all.
Thank you very much, Miss Ruby. I love your enthusiasm. Can we move on to Mr. Khoo?
Yeah, I used to write a weekly column for The Edge, and prior to that for Focus Malaysia. And some weeks it was a bit of a challenge to, to kind of dream up what to write about. So my process was, as soon as I delivered my piece to Azam by Wednesday morning, typically, but Wednesday afternoon, I would be thinking about what I'd be writing the next week. So the writing is easy. The writing is just it will flow. The hard part is knowing what you want to write about. So I put it into the subconscious and I let it sit there and percolate, and then just kind of like, sit in the background. And then I let the events of Thursday, Friday, Saturday occur. And then, because this is Malaysia, there's always fodder for something to write about, right? Because this is Malaysia, like, could be Hollywood, right? It's a good place for Hollywood script writers. So by the time Saturday, Sunday rolled around, I would have a fair idea, 2 or 3 things that I want to talk about. Then Monday, Tuesday, I let that idea settle. Wednesday morning, I'd write literally for 2 hours. The writing part is fast once you know what to write about. So that would be my process. Then on the other side of the scale, you got people like Stephen King, who, shall we say, had a very creative process to his writing. He would use a cocktail of mind-altering substances to dream up his fictional storylines. And we know how good Stephen King was in his pomp, right? So it's really your own individual process. And once you start the ball rolling, like what Miss Fatin is saying, just start writing. And then you'll find your process along the way.
Can I add something?
Yes,
Can I add
please.
something? I really like how Mr. Khoo talks about the subconscious, because sometimes when I'm not writing, I feel like I'm writing in my head. And when I actually do that, like actually let myself, like actually let the idea sit in my head, when I'm writing, it just flows out. Like I'm overthinking about the writing, but actually when you let it sit in your head, you're actually writing in your head and your subconscious is doing it for you. So don't be too hard on yourself.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your amazing answers. Before we close the Q&A session, would anyone else like to ask one final question?
Actually, I have one final question to Mr. Khoo. You worked in BFM before. I love BFM, the morning run, breakfast grill, and you also mentioned the importance of storytelling in your line of work. How do you think BFM's storytelling approach has made a positive impact on its audience and the wider community?
Well, the assumption is that it's made a positive influence, right? So that presupposes the answer. But I think before BFM turned up, we didn't have that kind of like public voice for essentially, people in this room. It was quite B-side, quite niche, people who had a very strong interest in the culture, the arts, writing, literature, books, and that kind of thing. So from that sense, yes, that's the first thing. The second thing is the impartiality, at least in the early days, of independent thought. And I like what Miss Ruby said, a sense from the clouds of government and how it can help you, I think it was JFK that said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I think because we live in an era of autonomy, of social media, the ability to be seen by the world at large, from just your social media handles, right? We should and we can and should use those channels to really propagate our thoughts. And as you say, Ruby, and as you say, Fatin, just start writing. And if it's from the heart, there will be some traction. So yeah, BFM did that. It brought to the public domain, the public consciousness, this ability to have impartial thought, independent thoughts, to show the world that arts and culture and literature and English really mattered. And it's really about creativity. It's about expressing oneself. One should really go beyond the hard sciences, whether it's law, accounting, physics, chemistry, whatever. And creativity is the additional dimension which fills us out as human beings and individuals. So if we can use that to the best of our abilities, well then, more power to you, right? What do you think, guys?
Thank you very much, Mr. Khoo.
Thank you very much, everyone, for the questions. Thank you, speakers, for answering the questions. And thank you, Dr. Rai, for the quotes and the mum jokes in the chat box. We truly appreciate it. Do support Dr. Rai by sending your answers to her mum joke. So, distinguished members, as our forum discussion on the subject West Literature in Today's Society comes to a conclusion, I'd like to pause and think about the insightful discussion we've had and the various viewpoints that have been presented. We have spent a lot of time discussing the place of literature in the contemporary world, delving into its importance, effects, and difficulties. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who came to the meeting today. Your insightful comments, perspective inquiries, and enthusiasm for books have really infused this forum with life and dynamism. Each of you have offered a distinct viewpoint that has helped us comprehend the topic at issue more thoroughly. In spite of the fast-paced digital environment we live in, it was clear from our talks that literature plays a significant role in our culture. Literature continues to be a source of knowledge, inspiration, and a link across civilizations. It has the ability to connect us to the past, present, and future by spanning time and space. Literature shapes our perception of ourselves and the world around us by providing us with deep insights into the human condition through its skillful storytelling. I want to end by sincerely thanking all the attendees, speakers, and volunteers that helped make this forum possible. You have truly inspired me with your commitment to the literary arts and to spread information. Let's continue to have deep discussions and promote a love of reading in all facets of our lives, carrying the spirit of this forum with us. So let's leave this gathering with a renewed commitment to promoting reading enjoyment and stoking the literary fire in modern culture. Thank you, and may the beauty of knowledge of books fill the pages of your life. Take care, everyone. Have a blessed day ahead. To commemorate this auspicious event, let us all switch on our video cameras for a quick photo session before we officially end today's presentation. Take on. And please do fill the feedback form, as we would truly appreciate your responses regarding today's forum. Thank you very much. One moment, everyone. The technical team is setting up some stuff, so she will tell you when it's time to take a photo. Thank you very much, Mr. Khoo. All right, the technical team is ready. Let's all take a photo. Smile, everyone. 1, 2, 3. Another one? One more? Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you once again to the speakers for being such amazing people. I really had fun talking to you guys. Thank you.
Brilliant job, everyone. I'm so impressed. Dr. Ryan, Dr. Mel. You guys should be proud. Fantastic job. I just want to say that to everyone. What an amazing. I had a lot of fun, truly.
Yeah, same here. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for your questions as well. Thanks, Dr. Rai. Thanks, Natasha.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank
Thank
you, everyone.
you.